Unscrupulous mom and unemployed bitch sister brazenly sued me for 80% of my father's inheritance, accusing me of embezzlement. Mom's infidelity and my sister's lack of direction led to them scheming for 80% of dad's inheritance, all while accusing me of embezzling and nearly ruining the company after dad suddenly passed away from a heart attack. I'm a 32-year-old guy who's just endured one of the hardest weeks of my life. Losing my dad to a sudden heart attack was devastating, and the family drama that followed only made things worse. I never imagined I'd be dealing with something like this at my age, but here we are. For some context, my parents divorced when I was 15, and it was a messy affair. My mom had cheated on my dad with his best friend, which shattered our family. My younger sister Sarah, who's 28 now, took mom's side during the divorce, while I chose to stay with dad. That choice created a deep rift between Sarah and me that never really healed. Dad was a successful businessman who built his company from the ground up. He started with a small electronics repair shop in our garage when I was a kid. I have fond memories of spending weekends helping him sort components and learning about circuits. Over time, he expanded that small shop into a chain of stores across the state. Watching him work so hard to achieve his dreams was truly inspiring. After the divorce, Dad threw himself even more into his work, likely as a way to cope with the pain of Mom's betrayal. I remember countless nights finding him still at his desk at 2 a.m., poring over spreadsheets or working on new business strategies. Despite the long hours, he always made time for me. We'd have breakfast together every morning, and he never missed any of my school events. A few years later, Dad remarried a kind woman named Susan. She brought happiness back into his life, and I was grateful he found someone after all the pain Mom had caused him. Susan was always good to me, never trying to replace my mom, but always there when I needed someone to talk to. She supported Dad in his business ventures and was truly a partner to him in every sense. They traveled together, worked on charity projects, and genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Seeing Dad smile again after everything he'd been through was a relief. Mom, on the other hand, didn't fare as well after the divorce. Her relationship with Dad's ex-best friend didn't last, and she struggled financially ever since. She's always been bitter about the divorce settlement, claiming Dad cheated her out of what she deserved, though from what I know the settlement was fair. Dad even gave her the house they lived in together, which she later had to sell due to financial difficulties. Over the years, Mom has tried her hand at various jobs, but never stuck with any of them for long. She's always had a tendency to play the victim, blaming her failures on Dad and the divorce. She worked as a real estate agent, then spent a few years at a department store, and even attempted to start her own catering business, which failed. Each time she started with enthusiasm, but quickly lost interest when things got tough. Sarah has followed in Mom's footsteps, often struggling to hold down a job and relying on Mom for support. She dropped out of college after just a year, saying it wasn't for her. Since then, she's bounced between retail jobs and bartending gigs, never staying in one place for long. She's always talking about big plans and dreams, but she never seems to follow through on anything. Now back to the present. Yesterday was Dad's funeral, and it was a somber occasion. A lot of people from the business community came to pay their respects. The church was packed, a testament to how many lives Dad had touched over the years. I recognized many faces from company picnics and charity events, all there to say goodbye to a man they respected and admired. I was the one to give the eulogy, sharing memories of Dad's kindness, his strong work ethic, and his love for his family and community. I talked about how he taught me the value of hard work, integrity, and giving back to others. I mentioned his passion for his business, not just as a means of making money, but as a way to provide jobs and support the local economy. It was tough to get through without breaking down, but I wanted to honor him the way he deserved. Mom and Sarah were there too, which surprised me. They hadn't been in touch with Dad for years, and seeing them at the back of the church during the service made me feel a mix of emotions. Part of me was glad they came to pay their respects, but another part was wary of their intentions. After all, they hadn't shown any interest in Dad's life for years. Why start now? After the service, as people were mingling and offering their condolences, I couldn't help but wonder what was really going on in their minds. As the funeral continued, I happened to catch a glimpse of Mom and Sarah huddled together in a quiet corner, whispering to each other. They hadn't noticed me nearby, and what I overheard left me seething. Mom was discussing how now was the perfect time to claim what she felt was rightfully hers. Sarah chimed in, suggesting they push for at least 80% of Dad's estate. Their plan was to contest the will, arguing that Dad wasn't in a sound state of mind when he drafted it, and that Mom deserved more for supposedly standing by him while he built his business. I was floored. At a time when we should be mourning Dad, they were already plotting to snatch his hard-earned wealth. It felt like a knife to the heart, a complete betrayal of everything Dad had ever taught me about integrity, hard work, and self-reliance. The fact that Mom and Sarah were scheming to take what wasn't theirs made my stomach turn. I nearly confronted them right then, but I bit my tongue, knowing that causing a scene at Dad's funeral wouldn't help anyone. Instead, I resolved to play it smart and gather more information before making any moves. In the days that followed, as we began to deal with the aftermath of Dad's death, I kept a close watch on Mom and Sarah. They were suddenly very attentive to Susan, Dad's widow, acting far more pleasant than I'd ever seen them. Their sudden friendliness was nothing more than a thinly veiled attempt to manipulate her, hoping that by playing nice, she might be more inclined to yield to their demands. I also caught them snooping around Dad's home office, no doubt searching for anything they could use to bolster their case against the will. One day, I found Sarah trying to jimmy open Dad's filing cabinet under the pretense of looking for old family photos. It was obvious they were up to no good. The day of the will reading finally arrived, and we gathered at Dad's lawyer's office. Susan was still reeling from the shock of losing Dad, while Mom and Sarah couldn't sit still, exchanging nervous looks as they fidgeted in their seats. I kept a straight face, not letting on that I was fully aware of their scheme. As the lawyer began to read the will, it quickly became clear that Dad had left the majority of his estate to Susan and me, with smaller amounts designated for charities he supported. The business, which I had helped him run for the past few years, was entrusted to me, while Susan was given the house and a significant portion of his savings. Mom and Sarah, however, were left with a mere $10,000 each. The moment the lawyer finished, Mom erupted. She shouted that the will was unjust, claiming she had supported Dad for years and deserved far more. She launched into a tirade about the sacrifices she supposedly made, conveniently omitting the fact that her affair was what destroyed their marriage in the first place. Sarah quickly backed her up, arguing that I had already gained enough by living with Dad after the divorce, and that it was unfair for me to inherit so much. She accused Dad of favoritism, saying he was punishing them for siding with Mom during the divorce. It was clear they had rehearsed these arguments, and their voices dripped with bitterness. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I revealed that I had overheard their conversation at the funeral and called them out for their disgraceful behavior. I told them they should be ashamed of themselves for focusing on money instead of honoring Dad's memory. Mom tried to defend herself, claiming I didn't understand how difficult things had been for her since the divorce. She conveniently left out how she had squandered the generous settlement Dad had given her. Sarah accused me of always siding with Dad, but I stood firm, reminding them of how they had cut Dad out of their lives and rejected his efforts to reconcile. I made it clear that Dad had no obligation to leave them anything, and the fact that he did was a testament to his generosity, not their entitlement. The meeting ended with Mom and Sarah storming out, vowing to get lawyers involved. Susan was in tears, overwhelmed by the situation, but the lawyer reassured us that the will was solid and unlikely to be successfully contested, though he warned that a legal battle could still get ugly. Since then, my phone has been flooded with messages from relatives. Some are supportive, agreeing that Mom and Sarah are being greedy and that Dad had every right to distribute his estate as he saw fit. Others think I'm being too harsh and should try to see things from their perspective. A few have even suggested I give Mom and Sarah some of my inheritance to keep the peace. But I'm standing firm. Dad worked hard for everything he had, and he had the right to decide how it should be distributed. Mom forfeited any claim to his assets the moment she betrayed him. When Mom left Dad, and Sarah chose to side with her during the divorce, it fractured our family in ways that never fully healed. Sarah barely kept any connection with Dad over the years, which only deepened the divide. Since Dad's passing, I've spent countless hours going through his financial records and the history of his business, trying to prepare myself in case Mom and Sarah decide to take legal action. From what I can tell, Mom's claims about supporting Dad while he built the business are greatly exaggerated, if not outright false. The truth is, Dad's business didn't truly thrive until after the divorce, when he immersed himself in his work to cope with the heartbreak. To strengthen my case, I've been talking to employees who have been with the company for years. They've shared stories of Dad's relentless work ethic, how he spent late nights and weekends at the office, pouring every ounce of his energy into the business. It's crystal clear that Dad's success was the result of his own hard work and dedication, not because of any supposed support from Mom. One longtime employee, Jim, told me about how Dad had given him a chance when no one else would. Jim had a criminal record from his youth and was struggling to find a job, but Dad hired him as a janitor. Over the years, with Dad's guidance and encouragement, Jim worked his way up to store manager. There are countless stories like Jim's, stories of Dad giving people second chances, supporting his employees through tough times, and always putting people before profits. Hearing these stories only strengthens my resolve to protect Dad's legacy. He didn't build his business just for himself. He built it for all the people who rely on it for their livelihoods. I can't allow Mom and Sarah's greed to put all of that at risk. But a small part of me wonders if I'm being too rigid. Should I try to negotiate some kind of compromise to keep the peace in the family? I don't want to dishonor Dad's memory or go against his final wishes, but I also don't want to get caught in a prolonged legal battle that could drain the estate and cause even more family drama. It's a tough situation, and I'm not sure what the right move is. For now, I'm focusing on supporting Susan and ensuring that Dad's business continues to run smoothly. I've taken a leave of absence from my own job to handle everything, and it's been overwhelming, dealing with the grief of losing Dad while also trying to protect his legacy from Mom and Sarah's greed. I've been having trouble sleeping, replaying the confrontation with Mom and Sarah over and over in my mind. Part of me feels guilty for causing more family drama so soon after Dad's death, but another part of me is angry that they would try to take advantage of the situation like this. I'm also worried about Susan. She's been quiet since the will reading, and I can see the stress is taking its toll on her. I've been trying to shield her from the worst of the drama, but it's not easy. She loved Dad deeply, and seeing his memory tarnished by this financial squabble is breaking her heart. The business has been another significant source of stress. Dad was the heart and soul of the company, and his absence has been felt keenly by everyone. I'm doing my best to step into his shoes, but it's a daunting responsibility. The last thing I need is a legal battle distracting me from keeping the business running smoothly. I've even considered offering Mom and Sarah a slightly larger settlement just to make them go away, but I worry that giving in to their demands would only encourage them to ask for more. And more importantly, it would go against Dad's explicit wishes. Yesterday, while going through Dad's office, I stumbled upon an old photo album. Inside were pictures of our family from before the divorce. There was one photo that hit me hard. It was taken on the day Dad opened his first store. Mom was there, smiling next to Dad as he cut the ribbon, and Sarah and I were there too, just kids, excited about the big day. Looking at that picture, I couldn't help but wonder how we ended up here. How did we go from that happy family to this mess? So, Reddit, am I the jerk for confronting my mom and sister about their plan to take most of my dad's estate? Should I stand firm in defending Dad's wishes, or should I try to find some middle ground? I could really use some outside perspective on this whole mess. Update 1. It's been about a month since my last post, and I wish I had better news to share. The situation with my mom and Sarah has escalated far beyond what I could have imagined. It feels like I'm living in some bizarre soap opera, except this is my real life, and there's no dramatic music to warn me when things are about to go sideways. First off, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Your advice and support have been a lifeline during this crazy time. To those who said I was right to stand my ground, thank you. Your encouragement has helped me stay resolute in the face of everything that's happened since. And to those who suggested trying to find a middle ground, I appreciate your perspective. I did try to compromise, but, well, I'll get to that. So where do I begin? I suppose the most logical place to begin is with the lawsuit. Yes, you read that right. Mom and Sarah actually went ahead and hired a lawyer to contest Dad's will. The papers were served to me barely a week after the will reading. Their lawyer is notorious for being cutthroat in inheritance disputes, which immediately put me on edge. The lawsuit alleges that Dad wasn't of sound mind when he drafted his will, and that Mom was somehow instrumental in manipulating him during their marriage to help build the business. They're demanding a staggering 80% of the estate, exactly as I overheard them plotting at the funeral. The entire situation is absurd, but it's creating very real problems for us. The legal fees are already mounting. I had no choice but to bring on a lawyer to defend against their baseless claims. Thankfully, Dad's old friend and legal advisor, Tom, stepped up to help. Tom knows our family history and the ins and outs of Dad's business, which gives us a solid advantage. Even so, his services don't come cheap, even with a friend's discount. Tom is confident that Dad's will is airtight and that Mom and Sarah's case doesn't stand a chance. But he's also cautioned me that these kinds of disputes can drag on for months or even years. The mere thought of being entangled in this legal mess for that long is utterly draining. But believe it or not, the lawsuit isn't even the worst of it. Mom and Sarah have taken things a step further by launching a smear campaign against Susan and me in the community. They're spreading vicious rumors, telling anyone who will listen that Susan manipulated Dad into changing his will, that I've been embezzling from the company for years, and that we're planning to sell off the business and lay off all the employees. It's all complete nonsense, of course, but that hasn't stopped people from talking. I've had to spend countless hours on the phone with employees, reassuring them that their jobs are secure. Some of our most loyal customers have even started asking if they should take their business elsewhere, and that kind of uncertainty is the last thing we need right now. Just the other day, I overheard two newer employees in the break room whispering about whether they should start looking for new jobs, just in case the rumors about mass layoffs were true. It felt like a punch to the gut. I had no choice but to call an emergency staff meeting to squash the gossip. It's beyond frustrating to find myself in a position where I have to defend both my character and Dad's legacy to the very people who've been part of this company for years. The rumor about embezzlement is especially infuriating. Dad was meticulous when it came to the company's finances, and he taught me to be just as careful. The idea that I would steal from the business he built with his own two hands is not just insulting, it's outrageous. Over the past week, I've been poring over years of financial records with our accountant, preparing myself to counter these ridiculous accusations if they somehow make their way into the legal proceedings. The whole ordeal is taking a huge toll on Susan. She's not used to dealing with this kind of venomous drama, and I can see it wearing her down. Recently, she's even started talking about giving in to Mom and Sarah's demands, just to put an end to the madness. I've had to talk her out of it more times than I can count, reminding her that this is exactly what they're hoping for. The other night, I found Susan in Dad's study, holding one of his old sweaters, one he used to wear when he was working late at home. She was crying softly, and when she looked up at me, she asked, "Is this really what he would have wanted? All this fighting?" Her words shattered me. I've tried to reach out to Mom and Sarah directly, thinking maybe I could appeal to their better judgment, but they won't return my calls or respond to my messages. It's as if I don't even exist to them anymore. Everything has to go through their lawyer. It's like they've completely forgotten that we're supposed to be family. I did run into Sarah at the grocery store last week, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I could get through to her without Mom's influence hanging over us. But the moment she saw me, her expression turned icy. She accused me of turning the family against them, of hoarding Dad's money all for myself. When I tried to explain, tried to remind her of how she and Mom had treated Dad after the divorce, she just sneered and said, "You always were Dad's favorite, weren't you?" before storming off. It was like talking to a complete stranger, not the sister I grew up with. The rest of the family is completely divided. Some of my aunts and uncles are on my side, disgusted by Mom and Sarah's actions. But others think I'm being too harsh and that I should just give them what they want to keep the peace. My cousin Jack even lost his temper at a family dinner, yelling at me that I was tearing the family apart with my stubbornness. I ended up leaving early to avoid making an already tense situation even worse. That dinner was a nightmare. It was supposed to be a chance for us to come together, to remember Dad and support each other. Instead, it devolved into a shouting match. Aunt Sarah, Mom's sister, kept making passive-aggressive comments about how some people forget their roots when they get a little bit of money. Uncle Pete, Dad's brother, fired back, saying that some people never learned the value of hard work. By the time Jack started yelling, the whole evening had turned into utter chaos. Despite all this, I've been pouring every ounce of energy into keeping the business running smoothly. Dad built this company from nothing, and I'll be damned if I let it crumble now. The employees have been amazing. Many of them have known me since I was a kid, and they've been sharing stories about Dad that have kept me going during this rough time. Jim, the guy I mentioned before, the one Dad gave a second chance to, has been especially supportive. He's rallied the team, reminding everyone that we need to stay united through this storm. His loyalty and the support of others like him are what keep me fighting, even when everything else seems to be falling apart. Jim has been an incredible source of support through all of this. Just the other day, he stopped by my office with a stack of old photos from various company events over the years. Picnics, Christmas parties, grand openings. In every single one, there was Dad, sleeves rolled up, working right alongside everyone else. "This is who your dad was," Jim said to me. "Not what they're trying to make him out to be. This is what you're fighting for." His words hit me harder than I can explain, but the weight of this fight is taking a toll on me. I'm barely sleeping, my mind constantly racing with thoughts of what Mom and Sarah might pull next. I've lost weight, and my friends keep telling me I look like I've been through hell. I've had to cancel plans, miss social events, and put my entire life on hold just to deal with this mess. The other day I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and hardly recognized the reflection staring back. Dark circles under my eyes, a rough stubble from days without shaving, and an overall look of exhaustion. It made me wonder if all of this is even worth it. The worst part is the constant second-guessing. Am I doing the right thing? Should I just give in and hand over more money to make all this go away? But then I remember the look on Dad's face when he told me he was leaving me the business, the pride and trust he had in me. I can't let him down. I won't. I know the road ahead is going to be rough. Tom has already warned me that the lawsuit could drag on for months, maybe even years, and the rumors Mom and Sarah are spreading aren't going to disappear overnight. But I'm ready for the fight. I've started documenting everything, every rumor, every declined call, every attempt I've made to reach out to them. Tom says it could all be valuable if this goes to court. I've also been gathering statements from longtime employees about Dad's work ethic and how the company grew after the divorce. If Mom wants to claim she had a hand in building this business, we'll have plenty of evidence to prove otherwise. I've also decided it's time to take a more proactive approach in countering their smear campaign. I'm planning a company-wide meeting to address the rumors directly with our employees. I'm going to be transparent about what's happening and reassure everyone that their jobs are secure. On top of that, I'm thinking of personally reaching out to some of our biggest customers to maintain their trust. Susan and I have also been discussing ways to honor Dad's memory. We've decided to set up a scholarship fund in his name to help local kids who want to study business or electronics. It's a fitting tribute to who Dad was and the values he stood for, and it's also a way to show the community that we're committed to giving back, just like he always was. The response to the scholarship idea has been overwhelmingly positive. The principal at my old high school even suggested we present the first scholarship at this year's graduation ceremony. It's a small ray of hope amidst all this darkness. As for Mom and Sarah, I've reached my limit. I'm done trying to reason with them. If they want to communicate, they'll have to do it through the lawyers. It breaks my heart to think about how Dad would feel seeing his family torn apart like this. I know this update isn't the hopeful resolution many of you might have been hoping for. I wish I could tell you that Mom and Sarah had come to their senses, that we had worked things out, and that we're one big happy family again. But that's not the reality. The reality is messy, painful, and frustrating. But I'm not giving up. To those of you who suggested I try to compromise in my original post, I want you to know that I did try. I offered to set up trust funds for both Mom and Sarah, giving them more than the $10,000 Dad left them, but still far less than the absurd 80% they're demanding. They rejected it outright. It's clear now that they won't be satisfied with anything less than taking control of the entire estate. Their counteroffer, if you can even call it that, was a joke. They said they'd drop the lawsuit if I handed over 70% of the estate and stepped down from the company. When Tom relayed that to me, I almost laughed. It was so absurd, so disconnected from reality, that I started to wonder if they're living in the same world as the rest of us. And so, here I am, bracing myself for a long, ugly legal battle with my own mother and sister. This isn't where I imagined I'd be just a month ago, but it's where I find myself now. I'm still struggling to come to terms with losing my dad, but I know this is where I need to be, and I'm ready to face it head on. What hurts the most isn't just the legal battle or the sleepless nights. It's knowing that no matter what happens, our family will never be the same. Even if, by some unlikely miracle, Mom and Sarah were to drop the lawsuit tomorrow, the damage is already irreparable. Too much has been said, too many boundaries crossed. The trust we once had is gone, and I'm starting to wonder if there was ever any real love from their side to begin with. But through all of this, I'm not standing alone. Susan has been my anchor, keeping me grounded when everything else feels like it's falling apart. She's dealing with her own grief, missing Dad and bearing the weight of the lawsuit and the rumors, but she's never wavered in her support for me. She's the one who pulls me back from the edge when I start to question whether this fight is worth it. I honestly can't imagine going through this without her by my side. Then there's the unexpected support from Dad's friends, the employees who've become like family, and even some of our loyal customers who've reached out to lend a hand or offer a kind word. It's made me realize that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who stand with you, who share your values, who help you become the best version of yourself. That's a lesson Dad tried to teach me, and it's never been clearer to me than it is now. I'll share another update when there's more to report, but for now I could really use any advice on handling frivolous lawsuits or dealing with smear campaigns. And if anyone has a good joke, I could definitely use a laugh right about now. Thank you again, Reddit, for all your support. It means more to me than you'll ever know. Here's hoping that the next update brings some positive news. Update 2. It's been nearly a year since my last update, and what a year it's been. I've been hesitant to write this final update, partly because life has been so chaotic, but mostly because I wanted to make sure everything was truly settled before I shared it with you all. A lot has happened, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all, but I promise to keep you posted, so here goes. First off, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to everyone who's followed this journey from the beginning. Your support and advice have been lifelines during this ordeal. I've read every comment, and each one has helped me more than you know. Even the jokes and memes you sent managed to bring a smile to my face during some really dark times. So where do I begin? I guess the best place is with the lawsuit. After months of grueling legal battles, endless paperwork, and sleepless nights, we finally had our day in court. It was exhausting, to say the least. Mom and Sarah's lawyer did everything in his power to paint Mom as the devoted wife who supported Dad through the early years of the business, only to be unfairly pushed aside and cheated out of what was rightfully hers. The courtroom drama was intense. Their lawyer even brought in so-called experts to testify about the value of a spouse's contribution to a business, arguing that Mom's emotional support was critical to Dad's success. Mom took the stand and spun a story about the lonely nights she spent while Dad worked late, conveniently omitting the part where she was having an affair with Dad's best friend. But Tom, our lawyer, was more than ready. He presented a mountain of evidence showing Dad's relentless work ethic, testimony from employees about how the company really took off after the divorce, and financial records proving that Mom had received a generous settlement back then. He didn't shy away from addressing Mom's affair either, something she had conveniently left out of her tale of woe. One of the most impactful moments was when Jim, the employee Dad gave a second chance to, took the stand. He talked about how Dad had believed in him when no one else did, and how he'd seen the business grow through Dad's determination and hard work. By the time he was done, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom, except, of course, for Mom and Sarah, who looked like they'd been sucking on lemons. The real turning point, though, came from a surprising source. Remember when I mentioned Sarah snooping around Dad's office after the funeral? Well, it turns out she found something, and it ended up backfiring on them spectacularly. Sarah had stumbled upon an old journal of Dad's from around the time of the divorce. She and Mom must have thought it would strengthen their case, perhaps by showing Dad's state of mind or something. But when Tom got hold of it during discovery, it told a very different story. The journal detailed Dad's struggle, not just with the divorce, but with trying to keep the business afloat during one of the most turbulent times of his life. Dad's journal painted a vivid picture of the struggle he faced to keep the business afloat during some of the darkest days of his life. There were entries detailing sleepless nights spent worrying about making payroll, and how he had to take out second mortgages on the house just to keep the company going. It wasn't just the financial strain he had to contend with. The journal also mentioned Mom's affair, her lack of interest in the business, and her extravagant spending that added even more pressure to an already strained situation. When Tom read excerpts from that journal aloud in court, the room fell completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I watched as the color drained from Mom's face, her own evidence turning against her in the most dramatic way possible. One entry from the journal stood out to me more than the rest. Dad wrote about a night when the business was teetering on the brink of collapse. He had come home, desperate to talk to Mom about their finances, only to find that she had gone out with friends, spending hundreds of dollars on a new outfit. In that moment, he felt utterly alone, questioning whether he should just give up. But then, he wrote about looking in on me as I slept in my room, and how that simple sight gave him the strength to keep going. For my son, he wrote, I'll build a legacy he can be proud of. Hearing those words, reading Dad's thoughts from so many years ago, it took every ounce of my strength not to break down right there in the courtroom. Those words reaffirmed everything I had been fighting for. After that, things moved quickly. The judge ruled decisively in our favor, dismissing Mom and Sarah's lawsuit and ordering them to pay our legal fees. It was a complete victory, but I didn't feel any joy, just a profound sense of relief that it was finally over, and a deep sadness that it had come to this. But the end of the lawsuit wasn't the end of the fallout. Remember that smear campaign Mom and Sarah had been running? Well, that came back to haunt them too. Some of the rumors they spread, particularly the ones about embezzlement and plans to sell the company, were deemed defamatory. We didn't pursue legal action, but the mere threat of it was enough to force them to issue public retractions. Watching them publicly admit they had lied, they looked utterly defeated. Nothing like the confident, aggressive women who had started this whole mess. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy for them, but a much larger part of me was just angry that they had put all of us through this ordeal. The consequences of the case rippled through our family. Many relatives who had been on the fence or even supportive of Mom and Sarah's claims turned their backs on them after the truth came out. As for the business, we initially took a hit from all the negative publicity, but things have since turned around. Being transparent about the lawsuit and its outcome actually helped to rebuild trust among our employees and customers. They appreciated our honesty and saw that we were willing to fight to keep the company intact. We held a company-wide meeting to discuss everything that had happened. I was anxious, worried that our employees might have lost faith in the company after all the drama. But as I stood there, explaining the situation and outlining our plans for the future, I saw nothing but support in their eyes. The scholarship fund we established in Dad's name has also been a tremendous success. We've already helped a dozen local kids pursue their dreams of higher education. At the first award ceremony, as I handed out the scholarships, I shared stories about Dad, about his belief in hard work and the importance of giving back to the community. It felt like the perfect way to honor his memory. On a personal level, this entire experience has changed me. I'm more cautious now, more aware of how quickly people can turn on you. But I'm also deeply appreciative of the true friends and family who stood by me through it all. I've found a new sense of family in Susan, in our loyal employees, in the friends who supported me through this nightmare, and even in you, Reddit, who listened to my story and offered advice and encouragement when I needed it most. As for Mom and Sarah, I haven't spoken to them since the trial. I know this update is long overdue, and I appreciate those of you who reached out, asking for an update. I hope this provides some closure, not just for me in writing it, but for all of you who have followed this journey from the beginning. Thank you all again for your support throughout this crazy journey. This will be my final update on this situation. It's time to close this chapter for good and focus on the future.